Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today we are speaking with Laura Vann La Russo. Laura is a coach for professionals who speak English as a second language. She helps them be able to make presentations in an inclusive and culturally aware way. So welcome to the show, Laura. I'm really excited to learn about all you're doing and who you work with and how you got started, your story. So spill the beans.
So exciting. First of all, thank you so much, Jill, for inviting me on. It's a wonderful opportunity to share our stories and our dedication to empowering people. So, okay, you got my story. Okay, this is my story. I became, let me back up. I have been an advocate for underrepresented communities my whole entire life. In fact, I was an advocate before I knew I was an advocate, even as a child. It was just something I came into the world with. I'm born with this need to inform and empower people and help them to gain the confidence to stand up for themselves and to represent themselves fully, take up space in the room. I love that expression. So with that kind of nature, I became a New York State advocate many moons ago. And I provided testimony for immigrant communities and for the disability community. We testified and fought for greater accessibility and language translation at the voting sites, all kinds of wonderful things. We shut down federal buildings. We had a grand old time, okay? And then as I began to work with many of these colleagues, clients, and community stakeholders, I noticed that there was this bias that really needed addressing. And what was that? Many of my clients who were speaking English as a second language were being denied translation in the schools, translation if there was some sort of incident that required, let's say, for example, a police report. Now, we've gotten much better at that, but 15, 20 years ago, we were not consistent in supporting second language learners. And so I ended up becoming the director of a dropout prevention program for immigrant communities and for students with disabilities. And the idea of the program was to inform parents of their legal rights to translation, and also the educational rights of their children, whether they were disabled or they were considered second language learners as well. And I did that for about maybe 7 years or so. And then I became very friendly with a lot of the folks in the educational system. And they said, you should become a teacher. And I said, you're crazy. Oh my God, a teacher. But I ended up getting my master's in English as a second language through Adelphi University. Shout out to Adelphi. We were one of the first graduating cohorts of people who were instructed to get degrees in shortage areas. And one of the shortage areas was English as a second language. So I did that as an educator. And then I did that for another 7 years. I guess 7 must be my lucky number. And finally, COVID came and it was time to reinvent myself. And so for the last year and a half or so, I have been a communication coach for corporate professionals who speak English as a second language. And I specialize in confidence building, presentation skills, inclusive language, and cultural awareness. I do it all online and for 10 weeks. And each program is individualized. It's not traditional. Look at me, I can't be traditional. So, so it's a personalized action plan, if you will. We would meet and we would have a private conversation about what your pain points are in English. And I would design a curriculum specifically for you. And that's how it all goes. That's my story.
That is a great story. And it's a really necessary field. I know, I'm older too. So I remember back in the days when, people would come in and like hospitals for one thing and schools, but they wouldn't be able to communicate with the medical staff because there were no translators. And even things like DMV, places where, you have to go and you have to make transactions, but the communication barrier was really bad. And as a person who's lived overseas a lot of my life, I understand what it's like to try and communicate with another person when you really didn't understand their language all that well. You learn a few words, but it's not enough to communicate big ideas.
Exactly.
Big ideas happen because you have a big vocabulary. And when you have a limited vocabulary, you're not going to have the conversation that you need to have. So I'm thinking that what you're providing is really a great coaching program for professionals that are trying to increase their vocabulary or to be able to be culturally aware of different ways of saying things in English. Every country has different idioms and different things that are offensive.
Yes.
And people think, oh, it's just America, everything goes. Well, really, everything doesn't just go, especially if you're talking to older generations. There are norms and standards. And if you aren't aware of them, you can just get into all kinds of trouble and not even know you're in trouble.
That's so true. Miscommunication happens all the time. And so absolutely, it is what motivated me to pursue this coaching career of mine, this self-created coaching career, because there's a nuance to communication, right? There's a nuance. And I have the benefit of, at this point, of having taught from the elementary school level all the way up through adult continuing ed, and now with corporate professionals who speak English at the intermediate and advanced level. And frankly, many of them speak better English than I do. Why? They learned their English from the ground up, right? So they don't have some of those nasty, lazy habits that us native speakers might have. And their challenges, I want to say, or their pain points, right? They do follow a pattern. What's the pattern? Well, yeah, sure, I speak English very well, but I'm self-conscious about my accent. I speak English very well, but I'm worried about my pacing. I worked with international lawyers, for example, who spoke Spanish as their native language. So when they presented in English, Spanish is much quicker. And supervisors would say, you have a lot of knowledge in your head, but your presentation skills are terrible. And this prevented access to promotion, to professional recognition, and obviously really did damage to people's self-esteem. So it's really kind of, when you look at the whole picture, there's so many different levels to being able to communicate effectively, right?
Especially around something like the corporate world, because they also have their own jargon and their own way of communicating with each other. And, you know, the good old boys club is alive and well and living in corporate America still,
So
much
true.
to all of our chagrin.
Yes.
But they do things differently. And if you're not aware of the nuances, you're going to get left behind.
You know, it's very, very great point there, because I have had clients, for example, I've had Asian clients who may not be forthcoming or make eye contact, for example, because in their cultures, to look directly in someone's face when they're a supervisor could be considered offensive. And then in terms of miscommunication about what my place is, my position, the power dynamics that exist. I've had situations where I've worked with organizations, and the organization will say, we want you to come in and we would like you to encourage our staff that's bilingual, trilingual, to speak English more often. We feel they do not speak English enough at work, and it's not good. So then I'll go back to the staff and I'll say, this is the complaint or concern that I'm being told. What's your perspective? And the staff's perspective more often than not is, are you crazy? They're wrong. They're wrong. We do speak English very, very consistently, and we only speak our home language in social occasions like during our lunch. So what's the real concern there? The concern is that I'm not hearing you speak English enough during staff meetings. I'm not seeing you engage with other native speakers of English consistently. But maybe that perspective is not quite right. Maybe really what it is that the professional that you are observing, you are not considering that they don't have the confidence, or they are holding themselves back because they are afraid of being judged. They are nervous about using the wrong word. And also, especially New Yorkers, well, I'm from New York, but some of us are really right in your face and really, you know, I'm going to make this point. And for certain cultures and certain people, that can be really intimidating.
It's rude in some cultures.
Yeah, downright rude in some cultures, of course. For me, it's rude anyway, no matter what. But I can see how it can be overwhelming for some cultures compared to others. And my role as a coach is to get clarity on what these challenges are, what the miscommunication or misimpressions are. That's not a word. What kind of communication coach? The misunderstandings are. I'm human. So the misunderstandings, and share that information with both the administration who's asked me to come in and the staff and or colleagues or clients that I'm asked to work with, and to create a bridge of understanding between both of those groups. And then the second part is to establish a personal relationship based on trust and relationship between myself and either the individual or the groups that I'm asked to work with. And how do I do that? I take time to get to know each individual client. I have a conversation about what are your pain points. And then I identify those pain points. I identify those pain points, and then I create an action plan and assessment based on that. And so it's very personal, it's not generic, it's very specific. And that's the benefit of having a niche coach such as myself. I specialize in working with corporate professionals, and it's individualized, no generalities here.
So if you work mainly with the individuals on a corporate level, I mean, how would a client find out about you? And or do you approach corporations and let them know what you do? I mean, how does all of that look? I'm curious.
Well, I can be found on LinkedIn, first of all. There's no one else with my name. I have a hyphenated name because I am a feminist. I grew up in the 70s and so forth. So I wanted to keep my name. My name is La Russo. My husband's name is Vann. And then I'm so picky. I didn't like the way La Russo Vann sounded. And so, so I went in there and argued with the officials and pointed out to them that there was nothing in the licensing, marriage licensing, that said I couldn't switch it around. And I wore the poor woman out. And by the time I was done, she said, no, it's no problem. If you want to be Vann La Russo, you can. So that's number one. I can be found on LinkedIn. And there you will see also my email, which you can also send me an email. And in terms of reaching out, I'm trying to reach out every day. I provide you resources on LinkedIn no less than 4 times a week. I like to hear about the different areas where I could be of use to you. So I attend as many webinars as I can for corporate professionals, HR professionals, people who really need help in understanding what it's like to have a communication obstacle and need to improve upon it so that they can become successful. That's what I'm doing.
That sounds great.
Any suggestions to improve, please contact me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm trying a little bit with, what is that, Instagram? But I don't know, mostly Facebook. Mostly LinkedIn. I find that to be the best way to reach out to people.
Yeah, it would seem like that would make the most sense because you're dealing with the corporate professionals, and that's kind of where they hang out. So
definitely
go where they are.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you hold workshops or anything like that for people to find out about what you do?
I do offer workshops. They can range from a 3-session workshop to 7 to 10 session workshop, depending on the needs of the organization. Again, they are created after I meet with you because I want to know what your specific challenges are. I've done workshops, for example, for Cornell, for example, we worked on presentation skills. And so that was a 10-week seminar, actually, about how to improve your confidence as a presenter, how to be culturally aware, and how to de-escalate certain situations where people don't feel safe in certain conversations, how to create safe environments, and how to de-escalate. So yes, I do provide those webinars, and I can provide short trainings. It depends on what you need. Just contact me.
Are you mostly online or off? Or is it kind of a both?
I am totally online. I'm an online coach. I did teach in the classroom, as I say, for many years, and it was great. But I find, COVID was such a gift in so many ways, as horrible of a nightmare, right?
Yeah, I'm with you, sister.
Because, I was joking with my husband. I was joking with my husband that, gee whiz, I'm sitting in the middle of my living room. Like, how am I going to bring people to me? Well, this online coaching has established relationships with clients all over the world. And I just love it. I love having friends in Turkey, in Germany, in Italy, in Paris, everywhere. And it's also helped me in terms of how I approach my coaching, because I'm learning. I'm a lifelong learner as well as a coach, right? And so I am learning from my clients what they value, what they need, and their perspective from their place in the world. Well, heck, that makes you pretty cool. not only as a person, but as a coach. So I'm grateful. I am grateful for it. I really am.
And it really it's opened up the world in a way that it wasn't before COVID. And so many more opportunities exist now because of the results of what happened with COVID. Everybody being locked in. Now we want to communicate, we want to be with other people, but we have a new way of doing it with Zoom, and networking groups are popping up all over the place where you can meet people from all over the world. And it's just so exciting to me.
I know. I can't believe it either. And I keep saying, oh, one day if I ever win the lottery, I'll just travel all over and meet every single person that I've had the pleasure of interacting with. It's just wonderful. And I have to tell you a secret. So my sort of secret that's not a secret is I have a physical disability. I have cerebral palsy, which means that I walk with this sort of severe limp. But, attitude is everything, right? And it's never really stopped me from working or helping others, in fact. But working online, I have to tell you, has opened up opportunities for me and for so many other professionals with disabilities. So the inclusion piece is so important to me. And to actually see this word, inclusion, come to life in a real way, that, all kinds of people from all kinds of countries, all kinds of people in all kinds of conditions, sexual orientation, language difference, cultural difference, we all can have an opportunity to know each other, which is great.
It is really great. And that's one of the things I really love about having this podcast is I get to talk to people that are so different and so varied in their thoughts and how they present themselves, how they were born, or what's happened to them over their lifetimes. And they all have something so unique to contribute to the world. These other things are just, part of their story. It probably is what brought them to the point where they're able to actually contribute back, because usually
Yes.
our mess is our message.
Yes.
But I keep using the same words over and over, but to me, it's amazing. And it is amazing that everybody has something so unique to bring to the table, so to speak, as far as contributing to making the world a better place. And for me personally, it's really been a blessing in my life to be able to meet at least some of you. You're the 101st person.
Wow. Oh, what an honor. I love that.
Yeah.
I really love that. And I agree with you so much. I can get very mushy and sentimental, but I really, in my heart of hearts, it is a blessing. And I love what you said about sometimes your mess creates your message. And I held back on telling you and sharing with you that I have a physical disability, because sometimes, I do also address this issue of unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is unintended bias, as we understand. And sometimes I feel if I admit that I have this physical difference, unintentionally, it may be all that people focus on. So sometimes I'm a little sneaky and I don't tell people right away. And isn't that great that I can sort of hide in my little square and not know? But had it not been for all these experiences, the mess of growing up with a physical disability when there was no Americans with Disabilities Act, when there was no accommodation. I mean, we didn't even think about it, just dragged ourselves up the steps. We didn't even think to ask.
Yeah, I remember those days. I remember the days when there weren't ramps everywhere. And
right.
Huge strides have been made to make things more accessible for people that are otherly abled.
Yes. Having a disability is something that I consider a gift of physical disability is a gift for me because it's given me a certain perspective. Now, there are days when it's just a pain in my butt. Okay, I think of it as an inconvenience, but I don't think of it as a limitation. And it makes me a better coach because while I may not have struggled with language barriers per se as a native English speaker, I do understand what it is to be judged, what it is to be misunderstood. And even if all of that was not intended, how it can impact you. And so that's why I offer these pillars in this program, right? It's confidence building for your presentation skills. It's cultural awareness, and it's creating opportunities for clarity about who you are and what you have to offer. Because it took a long time for me to feel brave enough. The first time I had to do public speaking, I was an advocate for New York State. No, well, first of all, it rained all day and I came in soaking wet. And then I had laryngitis and my supervisor said, we have no one else to provide this testimony. It was for housing. You have to do it. So I got up there soaking wet, makeup running, terrified. My name is Laura La Russo at the time. And I was absolutely terrified. And it was a process for me. And that's what it is for my clients. And I'm sure many of the people that you've worked with, you see growth with support and with good conversation and personal connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And having a disability, it is a communication. There is a communication barrier there because people, for some reason, think that, if you're physically disabled, that it somehow has affected your brain.
I know.
It's just like
so annoying.
It's so annoying. I can imagine. Yeah. But,
yes.
And they don't really know how to talk to you. And it's like, will you just talk to me?
Exactly. But, it's about exposure. That's really what it is. It's about exposure. How many people with disabilities do you actually see in the workforce? How many, actually, if you're honest with yourself?
I actually worked for a man who was a dwarf. And I was not expecting it when I walked into the office. I was a temp. And I had to really adjust on the fly. He was the office manager. And it was back in the early 90s, I think. So he was probably one of the first otherly able people that I'd ever met in a business setting. And he's a really nice guy. It didn't affect his ability to communicate.
No.
At all. It was my problem, not his.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I apologize for that. So the thing is that, first of all, we can't say dwarf anymore. We have to say little person.
Little person, okay.
And don't worry. I'm sure there'll be another even better title like in a year from now. These titles change all the time, but right now it's a little person. So the thing is that you can't really be too hard on yourself if you've never seen this sort of dynamic before. And I'm not talking about stature. I'm talking about seeing a person with a physical disability who's in a supervisory position. That was more probably what sort of surprised you. It wasn't the norm of what you were, whatever norm is. It wasn't the usual of what you were expecting, right?
Yeah,
and then
totally.
Someone comes in. Yeah, I understand that because I taught in the New York City public school. And often, well, first of all, when I first applied to this program through Adelphi, they were very supportive, but their initial reaction was, are you sure you want to do this? Could be really hard. And they were sort of worried. And I was the only person on staff with a physical disability. And there was plenty of discrimination and bias there, some intended, some not intended. I cannot become fully angry I can only use that experience and create a plan of action, invite a conversation about it, right? Mm-hmm. That's the best way to diminish that kind of a thing that can happen. Mm-hmm. So
you
that's
have
what I do.
Such an amazing story, and I'm so glad that it's brought you to this point, because I believe in what you're doing, and I believe that it's really a great space to help people be the most they can be. So what's the one thing you want to leave the audience with today, Laura?
Well, again, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I thank you for your support. And the one thing that I want to leave the audience with is your greatest limitations are the limitations that you place on yourselves. Think about that. Don't limit yourself. Get comfortable with asking for help. Think of it as your growth journey, as your communication skills growth journey. And please do contact me on LinkedIn. I'll answer any question you have. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great conversation.
It has. Thank you. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
And I will put your link to LinkedIn in the show notes below so people can reach out to you.
Yes, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. And there's also my email there. It's lvlwrites@gmail. You'll see it on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order, or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.